Okay, so like I feel like this is a thing because like every week while we're sitting here like waiting to make sure we're live and like for people to show up, we need to dance and sing because that's like always dancing or singing.
Or eating.
I'm hungry. I'm so hungry today. I didn't eat dinner last night, so I'm like starving actually.
I got breakfast burritos.
I saw that.
We're live. We're good.
50 of them. Okay, it's been a weird week in Homegirls land, which makes me assume that it's been a weird week in other people's lands as well. So we're waiting for friends, and while we do that, so like Jess and I are in the South Denver metro area, and Angela is about an hour south of us in Colorado Springs. And like while we're very close to each other, we have different markets because Angela's market is so military heavy and based a lot on PCSing, which is military being transferred or moved around the country, right? So like it seems to happen that Denver Metro sees a trend first, whatever that trend is, and then it rolls out into the other cities, like into Colorado Springs, into Fort Collins, which is up north. So I feel like Jess and I have been seeing a little bit of shifting and slowing down for how long do you think?
It's hard to say because I think maybe like 2 weeks, 3 weeks has really been where it's been a tangible difference. I think before that it was really minute changes that if you aren't super in tune with the market, you wouldn't notice it. But it's become more tangible the last 3 weeks, I think.
Agreed. For me, I think it's maybe like a month, but for sure super tangible in the last 2 weeks. And then Ange has been like, nope, we're holding strong. Pricing isn't changing. We're not seeing a shift. And then all of a sudden this weekend, she texted us and was like, ooh, guess the shift showed up in my town, right?
I was hoping that like, we're like a year and a half behind you. That was still going to be like true.
You're a week and a half now.
We're a week and a half behind you.
Damn it.
And it like, it was no joke. Like it just like stopped as far as traffic goes.
Yeah. So like I very candidly have been getting my ass handed to me over the last couple of weeks because I'm mostly a listing agent and I carry a listing, bigger listing inventory. And anytime the market shifts or bobbles even like a tiny eensy weensy little bit, it feels so dramatic when you're carrying listings because that's when you start to get these like, oh my God, the sky is falling phone calls from everybody, right? So like the general consensus between the three of us is that the market is shifting. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to talk about, for us, I do believe that this is seasonal. Yeah. I do believe that we will see the market pop back up in January, February. So like our selling season, we do 100% of our equity appreciation between January and June. So I feel like we'll pop back up barring some really insane world stuff that's going on right now. But it feels drastic. So if you're watching, do me a favor and jump in the chat and tell us what city you're in and if you feel like things are shifting or changing a little bit. So what's happening for you guys with buyers right now? Like what are buyers doing?
So I had 6 buyers tell me in the last week that they're not buying right now.
Why?
It's been all over the board. I think the general consensus is the market just feels really unstable. It feels really unpredictable right now. They're really afraid of purchasing right now and having one of them was like, what if we go to war? Which I think is a real question on everyone's mind.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of instability. I also think, just to be candid, buyers are sick of the shit. They're sick of overpaying for houses that probably aren't worth it. And they're starting to get, I want to say maybe, I don't want to use the word savvy because that would imply that everyone else this year wasn't. But I do think that they are we are in a market where buyers are more in tune with what's going on than ever before, which is leading to different decisions, I think, than ever before.
And they're pushing back, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to buy a property at top dollar that's in crap condition. I don't want to spend that much money. Okay, so people are saying they don't feel comfortable buying. And then listings. What's happening with listings?
I only have, like, this is the slowest I've personally been in 3 years. I've got one closing next Monday, and then I've only got one listing coming on. And they texted me this morning that they wanted to chat. So, like, now I'm worried about that one, right? So for me, I'm unbelievably slow right now. And I think that people are nervous. I mean, the world feels very uneasy right now.
Thanks for sharing that with us and being vulnerable enough to say that. I mean, I'm getting my ass kicked, like, in a way that I haven't in a really long time. So I'm carrying, I don't even know, 5 or 6 listings. I took 3 terminations in 12 hours on my listings on Friday last week, which was shocking and super painful. And I can't sell what I have active. So, right, like, I had, I don't know, I'm like maybe 7 or 8 different listings. 3 of them terminated in 12 hours on Friday. And then I've had 3 or 4 that have been sitting that I can't sell it. And, like, I'm talking drastic. Like, I have one that's listed at, so I sold the only comp that's sold in 5 years in the neighborhood in April for 1.388. And that house was dramatically less updated than the one that I have on the market right now. Like, those sellers that I'm marketing right now just did $150,000 in renovations. We are now, so 1.388 was the comp. We're now down to 1.187. And if we don't have an offer this weekend, we're reducing to 1.15. It's over $200,000 that I've reduced my price in the last month. I just took an offer on another listing. I listed at $1,050,000. We went under contract at $1 million. The sellers were happy with it. You know, like, I'm really struggling. I'm getting showings, but nothing is happening. And it's not even negative feedback. There's nothing actionable. You know, it's not like, hey, replace this or fix this or clean or stage or do this. It's literally just none of the showings are converting over to offers. And it's scary and it's emotional. And, like, I just feel like I'm getting kicked in the teeth, like, all day long. Because, you know, when you go from, you know, you're going to put it on the market on Thursday or Friday, and you're going to have multiples by Monday with your choice of the best offer, and you're going to have appraisal provisions and inspection provisions too. We're seeing 30 to 40 showings and no offers. Even after massive price reductions, people are flipping out. And us as the sponges, the emotional sponges, right? Like, it's brutal. If you're watching, tell us what city you're in and tell us if you're feeling a shift at all and whether it's, like, dramatic or just a little bit. So I think that a lot of people will think that this is a super weird conversation to have today, because a lot of agents either don't know the market well enough to know what's happening, or they've kind of got their head in the sand and they're refusing to acknowledge what's happening. But before this becomes widespread and more drastic potentially, I think we should talk about price reductions and terminations and really brutal conversations and how you have those with other agents and your clients.
I mean, I'm just starting this, like, this past week. I feel like I don't remember what it was like. Like, I blacked out for the last couple of years when this was normal. Like, I always forget that this time of year always happens. But I don't know what it is, but it seems like this year is worse. And I think because my market is primarily military driven, there's a lot of uncertainty with who's deploying, who's PCSing, and the amount of notice they're getting is days and weeks instead of months in advance. So they might not have the luxury of, okay, let's put the house on the market. We've got plenty of time. No, they're like, we're getting orders and we have to leave next week. What do we do? Okay.
Mhm.
That's a little bit different than it has been. I don't know what's driving that. I mean, I have some personal ideas of what's driving that. But I think that for our economy down here is definitely a factor right now. Yeah, I mean, houses are going for under asking price here sometimes. So right now is a great time for buyers to capitalize on that. Setting the expectations for the seller that you're not going to get 8,000 offers on the weekend to go through on Sunday afternoon or Monday morning. Being honest up front is going to save you a lot of stress and a lot of time later. Just showing them the stats, go in there and show them how many people are looking at the house on that hit counter that we went over last week. That's what I look at a lot. And I know how many people I need to have see the house on there before I get an offer. So law of averages type stuff. So know your numbers even more now than before, and make sure your house stands out above every other house, because while the market is still good, it's really a much bigger issue if your house isn't perfect. You might want to really think about doing those updates that the house needs, getting the house staged, professional photography, all of those things that you should have been doing all along. Now you really have to do it. Now it's going to be really noticeable if you don't.
I feel the same exact way. Like, I had to pull out Fierce Conversations, which is one of my favorite books, and like leaf through it again, because I went from being the yes man the last 18 months, 24 months to like, I'm the bad news of death, angel of death, housing real estate lady, right? So like, it's a stretch. That's like a huge stretch, even for me, who's been in this business 20 years, to have to brush off like hey, we have to have a price reduction talk. Like it's rough. So hi, Rich. Rich says he's in Woodland Park, Colorado Springs, and Pueblo, noticing a big slowdown. So if you guys are watching, tell us what city you're in and tell us if you're seeing like just a little slowdown or a big slowdown. So let's dive into price reduction conversations. Okay. So you put the house on the market, and let's talk about, first of all, how do you know when it's time to make a price reduction? So this is super interesting to me, because I will tell you, in my market, I've been seeing people make drastic, ginormous reductions in 24 to 48 hours after the listing goes on the market. Now, there's nothing wrong with that if you realize very quickly that you need to pivot, and there's nothing wrong with that if you're a strong negotiator remember, we're always negotiating, whether it's with the other side or with our own clients, right? So if you're a stronger negotiator with your own clients and you're comfortable having that, we need a price reduction conversation faster, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But what are the typical metrics or the typical things that you go by that make you go, hey, we need to have a price reduction?
Mine's always 10 showings is a good rule of thumb. Or if we're that first weekend on the market, and I'm guessing that this is probably where some of these agents are getting this from. If we're on the market for 24 hours the very first weekend and we don't have at least 3 to 5 showings, that's usually a really good indicator that you're overpriced. So those are the metrics I go by. And then if we don't have any showings for at least 72 hours, it's probably another really good metric that you need to make an adjustment somehow. And when I talk about price reductions with my clients, I always tell them they're going to be aggressive. Like, we're not doing $5,000. We need to get down to the next level. A $5,000 price reduction rarely does anything to help out your case.
Okay. So Jess, I think I agree with you almost exactly. So in my market, and there's a million different ways that you can calculate this stuff. If anyone wants us to like dive deep at some point, we're skydiving today. We're not scuba diving. So if we want to scuba dive and go like super deep on the analytics and metrics and the data on how to find these numbers for your own market, we can do that. But in my market here, I agree with Jess, 10 to 11 showings should translate to an offer if we are priced correctly. And if we don't have, so what I do is I look at that showing time report that we went over last week. and it should show me the average number of showings that I should have for that specific listing. So like, obviously my $1.3 million house is going to be different than my $400,000 house. So like on my $1.3 million listing, if I'm supposed to have 3 showings a week, if we're not getting that, on my $400,000 listing, if we're supposed to have 12 showings a week, if I'm not getting that, then I believe that it's time for a price reduction. I'm also watching what other listings are doing and the percentage of other people that are reducing around us as well. But Jess, it's interesting that you said if you don't have any showings in 72 hours, you need a price reduction. I've never thought of that before, but I like that.
I mean, I know like the NAR rule of thumb is 2 weeks, but let's be honest, if you go 2 weeks in this market that we're specifically talking about, like I think 2 weeks in 2009, 2010 wasn't that wildly inappropriate. It is now. So I think 72 hours, like if we don't have anything, we need to make an adjustment, and we need to make an adjustment quickly and aggressively because something's clearly wrong.
I also think a really good rule of thumb, although it's maybe not aggressive enough, is if you hit average days on market and you don't have an offer, then you need a reduction. What about you, Ange? How do you track? Like, how do you know when you need a reduction?
So for this week, I did a little bit different strategy. I'm making my houses active sooner, so I can track how many showings we have ahead of time. And then for the last 2 listings, I've started showings on Friday instead of Saturday, just so I could see if there was any more traffic. Because if I'm not getting enough traffic on Friday night, I'm having that price reduction conversation before Saturday's showings start. So I have a little bit more time to make up the difference for not getting enough people through the door. And I want that price reduction to happen before agents start looking in the MLS on Saturday morning. To set their showings, because that's typically what people are doing here. I have noticed also more showings during the week than on the weekend are being set, and I don't know why, but that's what I've been seeing. So if you as agents are not tracking that kind of thing, like it's really important for you to do so. It's one of those things that are going to help you later with your client, having those conversations saying, hey, we're not used to having, this amount of showings during the week, but for some reason right now we are. So it might be a good idea for you guys to make sure that we have, showings allowed after X time every afternoon instead of just on the weekend when you're out of the house.
Good point.
Because previously that's what we were preparing them for. And if that's changed, we need to be able to set that expectation or reset it. And I think that's definitely happening down here right now.
Okay, so when in a market that is shifting, balancing, changing, whatever you want to call it, when do you start talking about pricing and price reductions? Do you start that conversation when you take a listing presentation?
Yes.
Or do you start that conversation when you've been on the market for 2 weeks and you got nada?
Mine's built into my listing agreement and always has been. That way we've had the conversation up front. It's written out, the expectation. If we have 10 showings and no offers, we're reducing. If we've had 72 hours with no showings, we're reducing. And if we get, a bunch of 5 or more feedback requests saying that it's overpriced, then we need to make an adjustment. So I start the conversation well ahead of time. It's all in my listing present. It's all in our listing agreement. There's nothing to argue about because you've signed and agreed to it already. Done. You
never want to be behind the ball, right? You don't want to be that agent that goes in and rah-rahs. Now, we talked about this a little bit last week. It's a fine line. You don't want to be an agent that goes in there and is all doom and gloom and like, oh my God, you missed the market and everything is exploding, because you're never going to get a listing. But you also don't want to be the agent that goes in there and is just straight up rah-rah. And then you're calling them a week later and you're like, we need a massive price reduction. And they're like, wait, what?
There's a difference between being educated and being doom and gloom. And I think it's all in how you articulate it, right? Like if you come to someone and you are able to articulate and educate the seller, then they feel very safe and secure in your hands because you're offering education. If you walk in there and it's just the world is ending and COVID's never going away and we're going to war, no one's going to want to work. No one even wants to hang out with you when you're like that, let alone work with you.
Yeah, and everyone knows those things might be a factor right now, but if you're not telling them up front that they can expect that this is going to happen, then you're going to look like an idiot when it happens and you didn't see it coming. Or you weren't working in the market enough to know that it's coming.
Or you weren't, confidence is a big thing. right? Like NAR does surveys every year on the things that people want the most from their agents, and confidence is always on that list, because confidence then implies you're confident enough to negotiate, to take care of them, all the things that they want. If you're not confident enough to talk to them about pricing, it doesn't bode well. Okay, Rich has an amazing question. I think we will round robin answer this, and then at some point I'd love to see us actually role play a price reduction conversation today, because this is the worst part of the job, in my opinion. Telling someone you have to reduce price, telling someone that a deal terminated. How do we tell them that you missed the sweet spot by a month? And then if they say what happened to cause the slowdown, what would you tell them? I think the political unrest and Afghanistan stuff has played a part in the slowdown, as has school starting back. So to answer the second part, how do we tell them what caused the slowdown? I mean, I am very candid, because I guess I don't know why you wouldn't be, but it's multiple factors. In my opinion right now, kids went back to school. It's seasonal slowing that we always see from July to December, combined with the fact that it feels much more drastic because of the pace of the market prior to our typical seasonal slowing. Also combined with, yes, the world is very unsteady right now. People are very worried about COVID, regardless of your opinion on it. They're very worried about what that could cause economically, if it could cause more lockdowns. And I, like Jess, have spoken to multiple people and multiple agents over the last week who agents and clients are saying we're going to war, right? And that always brings up, nothing good happens when we go to war, right? So Jess, tell me how you tell your clients that you missed the sweet spot by a month.
You missed the sweet spot by a month. I mean, I just am very blunt. I think it just comes back to, that's how you build trust with your clients too. I mean, when we're sitting and having these conversations, like the house that I'm getting ready to list, that was the conversation we had. And they have the expectation of 100 showings over a weekend with 10 to 20 offers. And I flat out said, that's not real. You've missed that market. That market here in Denver came to a, screeching halt in May and June. And this is where we're at. And here's the expectations that we need to set moving forward. So I just say it. I don't think you can pussyfoot around these kind of conversations. When we do that, you build other expectations, maybe without even meaning to.
But listen to what she said a minute ago. This is such a great point. There's a very large difference between being educated and confident and being nasty, or being not confident, or being doom and gloom, or letting your clients know that you feel unsteadiness, right? Like, remember, you're still the professional. So I started also at the beginning in the listing presentation phase, but I go at it with data from the beginning before they even ask the question. So I have data and statistics built into my listing presentation where, I go through like public records. This is your house. These are your comps. This is how you stack up against your comps. Right now, here's what's happening in the market. Here's a chart that shows the escalation over the last 18 months and where we're sitting right now. And what that means on this little chart right now is that, because remember, I know how many showings I should get at each price point for each listing. That means that we should get 3 to 5 showings on your listing per week. If we're getting 0 showings, something's broken and I need to go fix it. If we're not getting 3 to 5 showings, that is a message from the market that we probably went out too high. And we know that every 10 to 11 showings should translate to an offer if we're priced correctly. So if we're going through 10, 20, 30, 40 showings and we're not landing an offer, then we need to talk about a price reduction. So I feel like for me, that encompasses the expectations about how many showings they should have. So they're not like, oh my God, I only had 3 people in this week. And, how many we should take to get to an offer, and then a price reduction, because what happens if we don't get to an offer? So for me, it's all up front. What about you, Ange?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to them about statistics also. upfront. I tell them exactly what's going on in the market that I see real time in the market, not what's going on the news and what the news thinks is going on, because they're very different. Unfortunately, the news is probably, 6 months behind what actually is happening. So, I show them everything with data. I mean, I straight up tell them, just like Jess does, like, look, we're not in the same kind of market that we were in a month or 2 months ago. We just aren't. Most of my clients are military, so they understand that there's a lot of unrest, because they don't know where they're going to be next week or the week after, because their orders are being moved around all the time. I have a lot of people that are dropping retirement packets up front. I think that they'd rather retire right now than stay in the military and stay active. So that's going to change their buying power a little bit. So that's quite a bit. I think it's really important that you're very candid with your clients up front and throughout the entire process. As things change, you need to be Johnny on the spot with them and tell them, hey, it's Friday afternoon. We don't have any showings set up for Saturday yet. Something is wrong. We have sponsored posts on Facebook. We have sponsored posts all over the place, and we're not getting showings. We're not getting the amount of people that need to see this house into your house. So what is wrong? Okay, it's usually price. We can always go down, but it's really hard to change the price and go up. So if you're already starting, let's say at 500,000, you're going to want to drop that significantly. Like, we dropped ours to 485 from 500 in 12 hours because we weren't seeing the indicators that we needed. And I knew we were priced a little bit high, which is okay. But I set the expectation like, hey, if we don't get those showings right away, we need to drop it. Everybody understand? Yes. Okay. So I always talk with them, and I always give them multiple net sheets when I'm going through the listing presentation. I give them a bottom, like a baseline, like, here's the worst scenario is that you're going to get X dollars. Are you happy with X dollars? Yes. Okay. My goal is here. So somewhere in between here, you're going to be extremely happy. So now we've already gone over that. We've got that objection out of the way, and you're agreeing and getting the buy-in from them that we might have to be aggressive with price reduction quickly. So I think that if you're open and honest with them and you show them the stats, I mean, it's a lot easier to get the response you need and to get the house sold if you're candid with them. I mean, if you're, hiding behind the fact that it's just a slow market, or maybe it's just because school is back in session. Those aren't real numbers. That's not a tangible thing to show them. I want to show them exactly how many people are looking at their house, how many people I need to look at the house to get an offer, and then what I'm doing marketing wise, so that they know that they have the best agent for the job. Because you're going to have to start doing that conversation again, where you justify that you know what you're doing because you're not getting the result that they're seeing on TV.
Okay, so excellent point with the net sheet. Because if you do that at the listing presentation, and I do that too, and Jess does too.
Yeah.
That is, again, a subliminal way, right? A subconscious way for them to start soaking in. We want to get to here, but we're probably going to be here. So you already have their buy-in, their commitment to being here, right?
Yep.
I call it the dream, the likely, and oh my God, I hate my real estate agent, and why did we hire you? So I just want to piggyback really fast on what Angela is saying, and maybe offer a suggestion as well. So we're allowed to put our listings in our MLS for 7 days as a coming soon. Since the start of the summer, I have taken full advantage of that 7 days. That 7 days is allowing me to see reverse prospecting, how many people have a portal set up that matches that criteria. It's giving me time to gauge what our interest level is. It's also giving me time to get showings scheduled before it's actually even on the market, so that I can see if we need to make an adjustment before we actually go live. And then it's giving me that time to really market heavily through sponsored Facebook ads and things like that. So I think that right now, we are going to move into a market one day in the not so distant future where we're going to have to actually work to sell our listings. And this is really, really good practice to start getting into the really good habits of all of the things that we should be doing to sell our properties. And I think that we should be taking advantage of every single tool in our kit right now to be able to help our sellers.
Yep, absolutely. I went into a market that I'm not very comfortable in. It's not my niche market. And I found some pretty big discrepancies in their market versus mine. my normal, there wasn't a lot of home staging down there. And by there wasn't a lot, I didn't see a single fucking house staged. And professional photography was like non-existent. So having a house that I professionally staged and had professional photos done and seeing that in the MLS versus the other houses, it was like, holy shit, did like the $1 million listing people come in and like list a house down here? Like what happened? Why is this, one of these things is not like the other? My house stood out so much. I've already had like 5 phone calls from agents like, did you stage a house there? I was like, yeah. And they were like, I didn't know they did that. Well, you should be. Like, if you want these higher prices and you have to get these higher prices to get people out of houses, like your house better look pretty damn hot.
I think that next week we should do our episode on how do you be Angela if you don't have no monies? Because I feel like sometimes what she's saying is true, right? But like sometimes I feel like people get really overwhelmed because they're like, well, I can't, like, I'm not Angela. I can't go drywall a fucking ceiling and fix all the things, or I don't have any money to put towards staging. So maybe next week we talk about like stuff that you can do to make a real impact. Like at some point, Angela was saying she was going to give us a home staging crash kit for like $500 or something.
$500 kit. Yeah.
Let's talk about not just staging. Maybe next week it's other things you can do to make your listing stand out right now that doesn't require a big budget. Okay, I want to role play asking a seller for a price reduction because, like I've said like 12 times, in my opinion, the worst 3 things in this job are telling a buyer they didn't get the house or they can't afford to buy, asking for a price reduction, and then telling a client that their deal terminated, which in my opinion, that one's the worst. So we're going to do that one too. But who wants to be the agent and who wants to be the client?
I'll be the client.
Oh, she's
Can we like tag team? Lindsay and I have done this in real life before, so we're good with it.
Yeah, we're going to do it. This is where John Jarvis makes me laugh. You're blunt? Weird. We have high D, very aggressive personalities, and this stuff it still scares the shit out of us. So that's like important to remember. These are difficult conversations for everyone, right? Okay. Oh, this is so scary.
The hand phone, you know it's real deal.
It's fake and I'm sweating.
Hey, Jess, I was just calling in to check and see how my showings are going. We're getting a lot of traffic. What's the feedback been like on the listing?
I was actually just getting ready to send you an email with all of the information that we need to talk about. Can I shoot it to you now and have you open it up so we can go through it line by line together?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Did you get it?
I did.
All right, so if you open up the first attachment that I sent, this is actually data that I pulled from our showing service, Showing Time, that you're familiar with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you look here, you'll see that showings were down about 67% all the way across the board here in the metro area. So if we pull it down to your zip code specifically and your price point specifically, there were only 15 showings all weekend in your price point, and we had 6 of those. So we're doing pretty good, but showings are down all the way across the board.
Okay, so how do we get more showings on the house? I really got to sell this house quickly.
I went ahead and reached out to some of the agents that didn't leave feedback and have heard consistently that they think that the house is a touch overpriced for the market that we're in. Do you remember when we talked back at the beginning and we said that if we were getting information that we were overpriced from several different agents, we would reduce? I think it's probably time to have that conversation.
But we just put it on the market. Should we just, let it go this weekend and see how it does? And then if we don't get any offers, then reduce it maybe on Monday or Tuesday, because I really want to get top dollar for the house.
I understand that. And you also just said that you want to sell it quickly. So if we wait one more weekend, we would have to do an even more aggressive price reduction, assuming we don't get an offer this weekend. So if we reduce it ahead of the weekend, we would be at, hold on, the phone cut out, I didn't hear you talking. I'm sorry.
I just said, what if we don't get any showings, even if we drop the price? Like, I don't want to have to drop it even more than that.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, we have to try something because what we're doing isn't working. So I understand your fear and I understand your concern. However, we have to try something. If we can nail the price and drive traffic through the house, That would be really great. My other suggestion would be we don't reduce for another 7 to 10 days if we reduce right now.
Okay, so I'm Angela's husband. I have a question though. Like all these buyers, so we had 7 showings. This is my favorite question, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
We had 7 showings. If the house is overpriced, like why didn't one of those people just offer lower?
Mm-hmm. I love this question. This is actually my favorite question. So the world that we've existed in for the last 10 years in our market, agents have literally forgotten how to negotiate. The message has constantly been, if you're not offering list price or over, you're not going to get the house. So we have to do the negotiating for them up front in order for them to get us to get an offer to write.
my husband said I would totally not ask that question.
I get asked that question.
Yeah, we get asked that question all the time.
Well, why won't they just write a lower offer? Well, and my answer to that is always the same exact thing that Jess just said in combination with, unfortunately, the market is speaking to us about how they perceive our price versus value. And it might be that they don't perceive that our value is high enough right now to offer lower. So we are going to have to bring the pricing down to a point where the value is perceived by the buyers as acceptable to them. And I know that this is a tough conversation, but you hired me to help you through this. And part of my job is to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Well, if we have one,
what's wrong with my house? Why hasn't people written an offer on it? If 7 people saw it, why don't we have any offers? Why don't we have any at all? Like, what's wrong with my house?
So before we answer that one, what I was going to say is if I also have a feedback response that they're somewhat interested, I will advise my seller to write a reverse offer and ask them what your bottom line is. You know, what would it be to sell your house right now? What would make you happy, Angela? What number would make you happy? If we were to go to this buyer and say, hey, our seller is willing to sell for $965, would that make you happy? And does that feel good to you?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I can't go below 475. You know, that's my bottom. I don't want to go to 465. If we can get it done at 475, I think that I'm okay with that.
But Jess, I mean, I don't get it. Like my neighbors listed a month and a half ago and they had 12 offers and they sold it for like $50,000 more than they asked. What's wrong?
The market has changed. The market is changing weekly. We talked about this at the start of our time together, our listing presentation, that the market is changing daily. And what I say today may not be what it is tomorrow or what it might be this week or next week. What I'm saying today could be different on Tuesday. That's just the market we're in. So we have to pay attention to the data that we have in front of us.
Okay, so I want to drop it one time and one time only. Where do I have to drop it to sell it this weekend? That's the worst.
Well, and you really have this. I mean, I think you have to look, again, I think you're going to have to pull the data and we're going to have to come up and have that conversation. I don't know if there is a bottom line that we can come up with that will have buyers see the value in your house. That is also the truth. What are you comfortable with, I think, is the real question. What is the lowest price you're willing to sell this house for? And that's what we reduce it to. And then we sit there and don't move again.
That's exactly what I told my client. So a real client asked me that this weekend. I want it sold by this weekend. Where do we price it that you can guarantee we can sell it this weekend? And my answer after consulting my homegirls was essentially, it's never a guarantee, especially with a market that's such a moving target with pricing right now. I would suggest that we go $5,000 above what your absolute bottom barrel, bottom of the line, I cannot go any lower is, because that gives us a little bit of cushion if we have to negotiate, and it gives us a little bit of cushion for inspection. So I would go $5,000 above what your very, very, very candid and truthful bottom is. And you need to tell me what that number is. Don't bullshit, because if you tell me a different number and that's not really your bottom and it doesn't sell this weekend, then you're going to be mad at me because you weren't aggressive enough. So go down to $5,000 above what your absolute lowest is. We will market it as heavily as humanly possible. And the good news is, if you price too low, the worst thing that's going to happen is that you could end up with a few people that want the property.
So if I'm going to drop my price that low, shouldn't you have to drop your commission a little bit? Because like I'm taking, a big hit here. It doesn't seem fair that I'm dropping the price, but you're going to still make the same amount of money, Jess.
I am dropping my commission because when your price point goes down, my commission goes down as well. But my value to you in this market, I understand doesn't feel good because my value, unfortunately, is not bringing you multiple offers. No agent right now can bring you multiple offers. My value is getting this home sold and keeping you safe through this transaction. And that value doesn't change even if the pricing changes.
Okay.
John Jarvis says there are a lot of agents that don't think they can even get an offer accepted if they don't have gap offers. They have no idea that they can offer under asking. They need to be better educated. So 1,000,000% mic drop. Yeah, I mean, we started talking about this like 4 months ago on our show when we were saying, hey, it's really weird that we're seeing one offer come in, nothing competing, not even like a whiff of another offer. And these agents are coming in 50 grand over asking with and giving away their clients' appraisal and inspection rights. So 1,000%, you guys, you have to remember that 99% of the market does not know what's going on. So if you know what's going on, you're way far ahead. But to answer that question about, well, why wouldn't they just offer lower? All these people that saw my house, they may not know that they
literally don't know that they can. I mean, I wrote an offer this weekend, $50,000 under list price because it's been on the market for 60 days, 70 days it was. And it's already been reduced 3 times and the house is vacant. It clearly needs to sell. And the agent told me to pound sand. And I was like,
we don't think.
Huh?
We don't even think he presented it to his client.
I don't think he presented it. I do believe that they're going to end up taking an offer even less from me in 2 weeks because I'm going to keep writing until they accept it.
Well, I took an offer, $50,000 under list after 3 weeks on market yesterday. So yeah, you can negotiate. Josh says the reverse offer thing is a really good idea. I do this too. I think I probably learned this from Jess like a few years ago, but I've done this for the last few years too. You can go back to anyone that has shown it, that expressed any type of interest. You could even do like a reverse in showing time announcement. There's a lot of different ways that you can call reverse prospecting. You can even reach into your own database and call your own clients if you're in a state that allows dual agency or transaction brokering. And you can go, hey guys, like I have a freaking deal. I know I can get you $20,000 off this price. Do you want to go see it?
So I think the root of the issue is that showings are down. The amount of showings are down. So how do we get more showings? What are some strategies that we can use to get our houses shown more often and get it across the desks of every realtor in town?
Let's talk about that next week. Next week, let's do because we're almost out of time and we have a couple more things, but you're so smart and I love it. So next week, let's talk about how do we get more showings when showings are down and what can we do that doesn't cost $1 billion to make our properties look better? Because those are amazing questions and I want to give that the time it deserves. All right, let's go to, you had a listing under contract and the buyers are walking. You have a termination. This one is the worst for me. Who wants to role play this one? By the way, the reason that I'm bringing this up is not just because this happened to me 3 times in 12 hours the other day, because it did, but it's because we had almost 1,000 properties in a 72-hour span flip back from under contract to active. So if it's happening to you right now, it will be happening to you. So this one's really tough. Who wants to be my client?
I guess I will be the client. That's fine.
Well, Ange and I will be the client.
Okay.
Who's going to be the appraiser?
That's a whole different bag. That's a whole different bag of tricks. Okay. This is harder on this than it is in real life, which I didn't even think this could be harder. Okay. So, hey, Ange and Jess, how are you?
Fine. What's up?
All right, guys, we have to have a tough conversation. I just got notice that unfortunately our buyer is terminating his contract and we aren't going to be able to move towards closing.
Why?
What?
Inspection did not go satisfactorily for them, and they found a couple items on their inspection report that they just feel that they can't get past, and they don't feel that it's the right house for them moving forward.
What were they? They didn't even give us a chance to fix anything.
So unfortunately, our contract is built as such that the house has to be, it's the buyer's sole subjective discretion as to whether or not they feel that it's the right house for them or in the condition that they need it to be. And they found a few things. The good news is that I think that we can get corrected really quickly to be able to get back out on market. It's a couple electrical things, a plumbing thing. It isn't anything massive or major. It's things that we can correct, but they do not feel that it's the right house for them moving forward.
Like, is there anything that we can do to keep them in the contract? Like, or are we like keeping their earnest money? Because I'm down to keep their earnest money because this is bullshit. Like, you got to give us at least a way to fix it, right? Like, if there's something wrong, just let us fix it. Like, I don't understand why you would just terminate over some dumb shit, probably.
So unfortunately in Colorado, our contract is extremely pro-buyer. And this is something that sellers and real estate agents have been very, they feel it's very unbalanced for a very long time, but the buyer does have the right to do their due diligence through the inspection. And if they don't feel that the property meets their sole subjective discretion as to whether or not it's comfortable for them to purchase, they can terminate and they do receive their earnest money back. And I know that this is really tough, you guys. I'm happy to go back to them and see if we were to repair all of these items on this list, if they would maybe come back to the table. But it's always difficult to try to put back a deal together and get it to closing when the buyer is really emotionally done or upset. And I do think that you might be better off just taking care of these items really fast with a contractor that I can send you and getting back out on the market and finding a buyer who's more emotionally connected to your house, and we'll get to closing.
But what does that look like? We've been off the market now for 2 weeks. Labor Day weekend's coming up. Showings are obviously going to be down. Like, they probably just cost us money. What are we supposed to do now?
I am going to tell you the honest to God, candid truth. This sucks. I'm 100% with you guys. I am emotional and upset about it as well. So I can't even imagine how you might be feeling, but this is a risk that you take when you sell a home. Your buyer has infinitely more power than you do as a seller. That's the way that the contract is built. And we talked about that when we reviewed the contract that we were taking from this buyer. And I think our best course of action right now is I will get right on the phone. I will find a contractor to come in and fix all of these things for you ASAP. We'll get them done. We'll get back out on the market, but not to rub salt in the wound. You are correct. The market is changing right now, and it is possible that we might need to talk about a price reduction.
So let me get this straight. We have a buyer canceling on our property over some shit we don't even know about. And now we're going to have to reduce our price because the market's changed and we're just supposed to sit here and take it? Like, what about the
oh my God, this seller I've talked to in the last week. I get where you're coming from, Angela, and I am 100% team Angela, and I 100% feel the same way. I do believe that potentially part of what's also happening is the market is shifting underneath us, and the perceived value of what the property is worth from the time that we contracted with these buyers to the time that now we got to inspection, it might have changed for them because they're seeing price reductions happening on other listings. They're seeing people, friends and family, negotiating more on the houses that they're buying. And when you combine that with the fact that they found some stuff on inspection that made them nervous, it could have just made them feel like the value is not there in the property. And I really think we need to attack this stuff, get it back out on market ASAP, and find the right buyer that's emotionally connected and is going to get to closing.
Okay, well, maybe they weren't actually qualified for it. And if we put the house back on the market at a lower price and they think they're going to write an offer on it, they can go fuck themselves because we're not going to accept it.
I promise that I will not let them back into your listing. Yes.
Yeah, they're not allowed. We'll put them on they're not allowed in our listing list.
And remember, if we have a Ring doorbell, we'll know.
We will know. If they sit on our couch, we will know.
So for me, that is the worst conversation of all time, right? Like termination is already the worst news of all time that you can give. And then when the market is changing and you've got to give termination combined with you're going to have a price reduction, what would you guys do differently? Because that conversation, that's like a take a half a Xanax or drink a bottle of wine and then make the call kind of conversation. It's rough.
I think the best thing you can do is get ahead of it and just say, look, I know this sucks. Like I empathize with you and sympathize with you. I'm going through something similar with, 4 different clients, unfortunately, all at the same time. And because the market is shifting, there's a lot of uncertainty, and buyers that previously were on board buying a house right now just don't see the value in our market and think that if they wait another month, they're going to get a better deal in the house. So it super sucks, but here's how we can get through this. And here's what we have to do to move forward.
I know. Rich,
sorry.
Rich says it really sucks when your listing falls through and that's on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street. Rich, every fucking listing I have right now is a nightmare.
Rich, I would love to share that.
Maybe you should it's like we're going into fall. Maybe you should do like a Freddy Krueger open house over there. That'd be actually really funny. Angela said something about other listings going through the same thing. That is the one thing that I totally forgot to say that I did say to all my clients and that I will always say. You guys just beat me up and I lost my brain. But I will tell
them. That's how the conversation goes, right?
Yeah, it does. I know the data before I make the call, always, right? So like I was able to tell my clients, you guys, almost 1,000 other properties have flipped out of contract in the last 72 hours. And I know that knowing that does not make you feel any better, but this is not an isolated issue. Okay. Price showings are down 67%. Pricing is coming down rapidly. And we had 63% of the market make a price adjustment in the last 3 days. And in the last 3 days, almost 1,000 other properties terminated along with yours. So I know that this news is really hard to hear and this is sucky, but we're going to figure out how to attack it and get through it together.
I would add to that. I never like to call a client with only bad news. Like I like to at least give them some good news. So typically what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll call every other agent that was interested or showing that property and call them and say, hey, this is about to come back on the market. Do you want to send me an offer real quick? If you send it at X, I can get it to the seller right away before it even goes back in the market.
Brilliant.
That way, when you're having that conversation, you can say something like, hey, I went ahead and I've already called all of these other people that were interested in the property and we have another offer coming in. So you can either decide that you want to take that offer right off the bat, or we can put it back on the market. It's up to you. Then at least you have something to go back to them with. Even if nobody else offers on it, you can already say, I've already called all the other agents. Their buyers decided to either get back out of the market for right now, or they offered on other properties, whatever it is. But I've let them know already preemptively.
And also keep in mind, we're using the word conversation because we're calling and speaking to them. We're not doing this through text. We're not doing this through email. I've been privy to a lot of things the last month with other real estate agents, and this all seems to be handled through text. And it is the most frustrating, unprofessional, aggravating thing I've seen for my friends and clients who have been going through this with other agents. Please, for the love of God, pick up your phone. Do not do this stuff through text.
And if you can't reach them, you need to leave them. There are reasons legitimately. It better not be that you're afraid, but there are reasons, because again, going back to confidence, like we talked about a minute ago, if you're not even confident enough, which you're not, because this sucks for us too, after 20 years and thousands of transactions. But if you can't fake it and convey that you're confident enough to have these conversations, they will not feel that you are capable enough to put them back out on the market and help them, right? But if you're in a situation where they can't answer the phone, that stuff does happen sometimes for whatever reason. Send a text, leave a voicemail, ask them to call you. If you absolutely, and look, I'm going to go out of the box here. If you're a newer agent, you got something going on in your life, you cannot make that phone call. I will give you grace because I have had situations like that in my life. get your phone, film a quick video so that it's face to face, and then you can send it to them and hide under the couch. Use a voice memo on your phone. Like, they need to hear your voice is my point. But there is grace because these are difficult conversations. And I think it's okay to say to your clients, I get it. I'm afraid too. The market is changing rapidly. You're right. These questions about what's happening in the Middle East, these questions about COVID, they're scaring me too. And I don't have answers. All I can tell you is I'm on your team and I'm here with you guys and we're going to work through it together.
Yep.
Anyone have any questions before we close this? I hope that
Time to dust off the St. Joseph people.
Joe's sitting on my kitchen counter right now. I got a couple Joe's to drop off actually.
Yeah, I got here on my desk. I'm going to use that guy later.
We should brand some homegirls Joe's and start sending them people. Teal Joe's.
Super sacrilegious.
No, it could be Teal Joe's and we could pray over them before we send them to people. It's actually
2 Jews.
Homegirls holy water up on your St. Joseph. All right. That was rough, but necessary. If you guys have deeper questions, you want us to talk more about this, let us know. Thanks, Kimberly. We love you. Thanks for watching. Also, if you have to have one of these conversations in the next week, month, year, whatever, and you want to role play with somebody, you guys call one of us, Facebook message one of us. We're totally here for you. We probably don't know all the answers, but we're 1,000% willing to walk through stuff with you. So these conversations give me anxiety after 20 years on a level I can't even tell you. So I just know that it means so much to me to have my tribe that I can reach out to and say, hey guys, I just took 3 terminations in 12 hours. So if you need a tribe, just reach out to us. We'll do whatever we can.
We will role play. I do a really great angry, pissed off seller if you guys need to role play that. So
yeah, I know when she was like, I'll be the seller.
Prepared for everything.
No, don't be the seller. You're scary.
And I'm the worst because I'm like, let's just be nice because I know what this feels like.
Well, I feel like you get a good mix of styles with us too, because I feel like these two they're very good at being blunt, which is something that I really, truly have tried to hone my entire life. And I really wish I had more of, but I'm like, hi, I sent you flowers and chocolate and I love you so much, but your buyer terminated. Please don't hate me. Can I take you out to dinner tonight? I love you. They're way better at being blunt than I am. So I feel like you get a good mix of what to say. But I think next week we decided we're going to talk about what to do when no one's getting showings, how do you get more showings? And then what is some stuff that you can do to a property that doesn't cost $1 billion that is going to help it stand out amongst all the other listings. Angela's probably going to tell you she's going to take Randy her pterodactyl or velociraptor and put it in all the photos.
He's a T-Rex, Lindsay. Come on.
Yeah. He's a raptor. Randy the raptor. He's in his office now. It's where his permanent location is now.
Well, that was intense. I'm actually have to make one more of these calls today. So
Awesome.
love you guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.